So with those preliminary comments out of the way, I'm just going to launch into the session. St. John's is undergoing change on a historic scale. With the advent of the oil and gas industry, economic activity is accelerating at a head-spinning rate. City Council is faced with an unprecedented number of development requests, which are in turn generating issues which go to the heart of the question, what kind of city do we want to live in? St. John's is a distinct place. It is rich in history and culture. Its people have always had a strong attachment to this place. It's important that planners and urban designers have an understanding of the context and of the unique characteristics of the city and how these influence design. Some of the unique characteristics include the harsh North Atlantic environment, the mass of historic buildings downtown, the available land for new construction, the cost of servicing this land, both in terms of the initial capital and then the ongoing operational, the availability of public transit, and the role of the market in setting prices for housing, office space, and industrial space. And there are lots of other characteristics as well. Another key characteristic is our governance structure, that is, our ability to make collective decisions about future developments. Who has a voice in influencing what the city will look like? Is it developers, current property owners, heritage activists, natural conservationists, etc., etc.? Well, one key group of opinion leaders is that of the architects. They have the expertise to outline a vision of the physical city of the future. They can help citizens figure out what is important to them, what needs to be retained, and what could be sacrificed in the name of progress. Unfortunately, Memorial University does not have a School of Architecture, but we are pleased that Newfoundland Labrador is fortunate to have in its bosom a number of talented architects. And one of these talented people is here today. Neil Dawe is the president of Tract Consulting Incorporated, a company focused on providing professional planning and design services to municipalities. He has over 30 years' experience in community planning, design, management, and project implementation. His educational background includes a diploma in forest resources technology, a bachelor's degree in environmental planning, and a master's degree in landscape architecture. He is formally trained in project management, having received his master's certificate in project management from York University in 1999. His professional achievements include managing the planning, design, and construction of more than 300 projects in numerous communities throughout the province. Neil is currently serving as past president of the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects. Please help me in welcoming Neil Dawe.
Which button do I push, my buddy? You're on. I'm on? Yeah. Oh. I didn't know if I was on. I think that bio is going to be longer than my talk. So, our student friends are in Fogo, so I guess I'm going to see them a little later on. And someone in the crowd asked, plan right now. And it's a real challenge getting communities to see the benefits of planning. And some of the harshness that we find among its splendor. So to speak just for a few minutes about planning and where we are, right now in the province, planning is governed at a provincial level. in this province at the first go is what I call a land use management strategy. Something like 88% of our land base is Crown land. That's a lot of land, and a lot of people are after that Crown land. And number two is that you don't have to register your land in Newfoundland. You don't have to identify what land in a municipality is owned by whom. And it makes it really, really difficult to plan a land base if you don't know who owns the land. We're working on an open space management strategy right now for a municipality, and we wanted to identify the Crown land and the public land and the private land along the corridors. It is a nightmare. There's no database. There should be one comprehensive database of information that you can go to, much as like you'll see in British Columbia. Impose sustainable planning, and I don't mean that in a negative way, through the creation of ICSPs, Integrated Community Sustainability Plans, that all communities had to do if they were going to receive gas tax money. So the government is starting to become quite serious about sustainability and moving it forward. So in that sustainability starts to identify what your goals are and what's important to you from the pillars that I talked about. What's really critical for successful planning is to identify the values and your goals and your vision, and that then drills right down into how your city or your municipality is realized in a three-dimensional world. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about place and why place matters. Anybody been to the Bean, I call it? Now the drudgery is over. This is in Chicago, Millennium Park. Anybody been there? It's a brilliant place. Us, when we were there, was the spontaneity, joy. You're with the happy city? Well, man, this place makes Chicago a happy city. It really demonstrates the power of good urban design and planning and integrating art, the opportunities for people to interact, the opportunities for fun. We don't think about fun enough, I don't think. So I'm going to talk about three things in the city of St. John's. First, I'm going to introduce you to Place Matters. I'm going to talk about thank you very much. A lot of research that's been done by an organization called the Knight Foundation in the United States. If you Google soulofthecommunity.org, you'll find some fascinating information. I listened to a presentation from the lady, a doctor that did the research. But anyway, I'll talk a bit about that. And their findings are quite informative. Then I'm going to talk about placemaking in St. John's and the impact that the Grand Concourse walkway system has had on placemaking. Third, I'm going to talk about urban design in St. John's. And if you'll forgive me, the last slides are focused really on design, and we're there kind of for the students. But hopefully you'll find some of it interesting. So why does place matter? Place matters because it provides an opportunity for the residents in your community to interact with one another and with the community. Here's years ago our kids on the dogs down at Harborside Park. So if we're going to have a modern community, what are the key needs in a modern community? We need to have educated people. We need to have new ideas that become commercial realities. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how ideas are generated in cities and municipalities and how design influences them. We should be linked to the global marketplace. If you've got an internet connection, you're there. We should have a multimodal transportation system. The Grand Concourse as a walkway system is such a thing, and Metrobus provides another option. We don't have the density here for rail or fast transit. But the last one that's not talked about a whole lot is community distinctiveness. How do we distinguish one community from the next? And how does that distinctiveness get realized in planning and design? So in other words, place matters. So if we agree that place matters, what would be the principles that we would use? First of all, community appeal drives economic prosperity. Now just think about that for a second. We generally don't talk about that, or often it's not integrated into our planning and design decisions. Change and the maintenance of character and identity are not mutually exclusive. As we grow, we tend to get uglier. Prosperity, ugly. Progress does not have to equal ugliness. Communities can grow without destroying what we love. Economic prosperity and community health, well-being, and attractiveness are not mutually exclusive. They did this study in, there were 45,000 people surveyed in, I think, 26 cities. And they spent millions on it. The Knight Foundation, soulofthecity.org. They looked for the three key community needs that three needs a community should have to remain distinct and to be appealing and to be economically successful. They suggested those three things are, number one, social offerings. Opportunities for social interaction and engagement. Two, aesthetics. Natural and created beauty. We have tons of natural beauty in this province. We're oozing beauty. Our creative beauty, we've got a good bit of that too, but we should have more. And third is perceived openness to everyone. This is that social aspect again, the sense of welcomeness to a broad range of demographics in the community. Everybody feels welcome and they feel a part of this place. From an economic benefit perspective, and this is where the power is in this stuff, and this is really powerful, because we've been kind of talking about this stuff for years, and you just want to shrub it up, you're just a rubber booter. The highest level of attachment equals the highest rate of gross domestic product and stronger economics. Now, who knew? Beauty is good for the pocketbook. Green is good for the environment and good for the economy. The study's empirically based data, and I've underlined that because it's so important, that provides the justification for integrating this stuff into how we plan and design our communities. It links quality of life, place wellness to GDP or economic performance. So this stuff is not, oh, it would be nice. It's the juice now. It works. So if we were to define what those place matters elements are that we should be considering in our planning and design, they would be the unique qualities and characteristics of a place. That would include its visual quality. Think about St. John's without Signal Hill. Its cultural, social, and environmental quality. It helps to distinguish communities by making our physical surroundings worth caring about. In other words, now that we know it has a lot of value, including economic, then we need to take better care of our physical surroundings. So if that's the case, then we should focus on identity and orientation and add to economic and social value. When we say focus on identity, that means who we are and how we are distinct. Number two, we need to create distinct, uplifting, and memorable environments. Think of the bean I showed you in the first slide. It's a brilliant place. Think about the environments in the city of St. John's that you go to. Man, you love it. It's great. We need more of that. We need to foster belonging and stewardship by residents. Without public input, none of this stuff works. Public collaboration has to be a critical part of it, But we got to make sure that through the public collaboration process that we don't get mired in the muck and we don't move ourselves forward in our planning. We need to look beyond building density, and I'm all for density, to values, customs, and other characteristics that make place matter. In other words, the tendency will come, and I'm sure city councils are under great pressure, to build our city up. How does that impact our place? Note that losing community distinctiveness has social and economic consequences. It's bad for how you feel, your quality of life, and it's bad for the economy. So, what are the best things a community can do to begin to support place making, place matters? One, in my opinion, is to build and maintain. And I say maintain because we all like to build it, but we don't look after it very well, generally once it's in place. To build and maintain an integrated system of park trails and open spaces. The city has done that. I might have had a little hand in it. And to put an open space management plan in place to protect that resource. That has not been done yet. We did the Recreation and Parks Master Plan for the City of St. John's and suggested this needed to happen. And it needs to happen because the resource that is the Grand Concourse, excuse me, is being whittled away at. And we need to protect that resource. And in our planning, we always say, excuse me, we identify those places in our community that we wish to preserve. It's opposite to how we generally approach community planning. Oftentimes, our open we need to identify those then densify the hell out of the rest of it. So what are the benefits? I'm going to show you a big old list. I'm not going to read it. But just to make my case, if I may. These are the benefits: parks, trails, urban spaces. Strengthens your place brand. Des Ryan with Veritas talked about Veritas is set up to do place branding. We've done a number of them. And it has a huge impact on a community. It's an appreciating asset. It's worth money. It supports population growth, encourages housing start, promotes new business startup, creates increased density, enhances local municipal tax base, protects the environment, engages social interaction, and look at that last one, creates beauty. We need to create beauty in our municipalities and in our city. So what the city has done and supported is the Grand Concourse. If you go to Corner Brook, the city of Corner Brook has Corner Brook Stream. That's done kind of the same thing. I worked for 13 years on this project and was lucky enough to see the master plan that was envisioned put in place. It has had a profound impact on the city and on the region, really, Mount Pearl and Paradise. Started in '89, finished in 2003, received numerous awards, including the National Honor Award from the American Society of Landscape Architects, one of the highest awards ever won in Canada, for the maintenance management manual that we put in place to make sure that the assets that are the Grand Concourse are maintained to a consistent and a high quality. It's starting to show a little wear, but generally. So the Grand Concourse brand was a walker's paradise. We brought the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects here for a conference, and what really blew them away was walking. The brand was the walker's paradise. That was the brand of the city, and it was starting to sell. Since we've added a bicycle system, I won't get into that, that you need to integrate cycling and bicycles. It's that integration that's so critical, how that takes place. So we've integrated 130 kilometers of walks, linked those areas, the rivers, lakes, ponds, parks, streets, and green spaces, and linked it up with all the bus stops. So now when we jump from the Grand Concourse into more of the urban setting of the city, how can we design the city and make place matter in how we design spaces in the city of St. John's? To my mind, if you can't differentiate yourself from everybody else, where's your competitive advantage? That's what businesses try to do, don't they? Don't they try to differentiate themselves from other businesses, so you want to buy their product. So the city really needs to identify how is it different than other places, and how can we bring that forward in design. It is said that the role of urban planning is to minimize people's distress and to maximize interactions, providing opportunities for people to engage with one another. It is suggested that urban designs should be intimate. They should be spaces that are smaller in scale to promote interaction. And they should be human-centered. If you're designing something, you should engage the public in the process of designing and determining what will be in that space, in my opinion. Now, there's been a lot of research done recently that I find extremely interesting, and I hope you do too. You might find it dull. But this guy, Geoffrey West, is a physicist, and he thought that there was no rigor related to urban planning. It's just a bunch of planners, you know, that's a good idea. Hey, Mark, how you like that idea? That's a good one. Put her on there, buddy. So this guy and another guy started doing empirical research on cities to see what makes them tick. And it's really interesting. They found that when people come together, they are more likely, someone missed a word, look, to exchange ideas and are more productive. Cities create productivity. Density is good for economic development. We only thought it was good for the tax base. As the city grows, things exhilarate, becoming more productive and more innovative. They actually looked at not all the cities, many cities around the world, and found that the cities that had the densest populations had the people who walked the fastest. Go figure. 3, that well-designed urban spaces support random encounters and idea generation. Now just think about that. Now I see lots of densification down on George Street. I don't know how many ideas have been pushed around on a Saturday night. But it does show you that the benefits of densification are beyond simply the more people you get in there, the more you can enhance your tax base, yada, yada, yada. It actually supports idea generation. And remember, we went right back to that third slide that talked about what municipalities and cities should have. Educated people, idea generation to generate economic activity and entrepreneurship. And last, and the most important, the first 3, they suggest, the first 3 in that list are universal. That works in every city, they say, in the world. And I put his name there just in case he's wrong. But the last one is the genius in it. Each city has local deviations, now not deviants, deviations that speak to community distinctiveness. Now just think about that. These they haven't been able to nail down. The first ones they could. So that leads us to asking some questions about those deviations. What they found is that those local deviations exist over time. In other words, it's just not a one-shot deal. They're not random. They're not a fluke. They're there. They're real. That city deviations reveal hidden correlations of urban life. What is it that makes the community tick? And how can we define those deviations, and how can we use those to support urban design? 3, identifying these local deviations can influence urban design and create distinct, authentic places. And it was here, Charlie, I was going to challenge your students. So, when we talk about local deviations, what makes St. John's different than Halifax or Moncton? The weather's better here. We got better gateway signage. Little plug there. But we need to think about those things. If we plan the same for Halifax, Moncton, and St. John's, why would you go to all the places? It's the difference. That's what attracts you to place, is those deviations that are hard to define. So, in my opinion, again, for the students, we need to unlock those deviations. One way to do it might be through community engagement, and we find social media an incredibly powerful tool for integrating the community in what you want to do. And that helps you identify what the key needs are. St. John's is unquestionably, we always say communities are distinct. We think St. John's is unique. But what is it that makes it unique? What are those deviations and how do we define them beyond the physical sense of the place? And will a new downtown vision be created by the information we get out of 1 and 2? At least it will be informed by it. You think me mad? So now this was again more for the students. I'm kind of winding it down now. Is some things for design that they need to think about in St. John's. They make the wind here. Right? The rain falls at right angles. We get lots of freeze-thaw, 32, 34 cycles a year. Not sunny a lot. We get less sun than any other city in Canada. 1,730 hours a year, something like that. I think Halifax gets 2,000 maybe. Dark at 4 p.m. at the end of October. Wow, driving home in the dark. How does that influence urban design? The northeast wind brings wet and the northwest brings cold. And number 7, we never use it. Microclimate is a major design consideration. Think about yourself growing up on the beach, Tom Cotton. Started to blow, what'd you do? Get behind that rock. That's microclimate. Simple little stuff, but how often do we use it in design? Not very often. Design approach in the downtown. Use structures and screens to calm the wind. Spread knowledge. Use urban design to spread knowledge. But let's take it easy on the signs. I think the city is getting signed to death. Create intimate, bright spaces. If we don't have a lot of sunshine, make sure we create spaces that are bright. Lighting, design, and color are important. The color palette of the city itself is perhaps unique. Introduce nature and seasonal change. Most of us grew up cheek by jowl with nature, with that wind and that rain. Seasonal change is something that we should try to incorporate in our design. You know, like fall and winter. Forget the other two. Encourage interaction. People need to encounter each other and have opportunity for engagement. Create authentic beauty. Mr. Greenberg talks a lot about authentic. He is right to do so. The beauty we create in our space should relate to us. That distinctiveness. Be contemporary but reflective. When we did those entry signs for the city of St. John's, we had originally done the row houses and thought, you know, let's make it contemporary. If we don't have something that's new and fresh but reflective, what are we leaving for those that are coming behind us? History is great, but sometimes it can be overdone. And have fun. Create spontaneous joy in the city. Think about the beam. People go to that beam when we were there. That cracked me up. People coming up, lying down, laughing. It was just so much fun. Now, it's only $500 million, Madam Deputy Mayor. So, how can the Grand Concourse be integrated in any of this stuff? Should it be? Should an independent planning and urban design shop for the city be created? This is, again, something Mr. Greenberg is recommending, that there should be an independent design shop separate from municipal government that is charged with doing the planning and urban design. Can the planning and design principles that are currently being used by the Grand Concourse in the work that they are doing all over the city be improved with place matter principles? 3, is an open space management strategy needed to ensure the Grand Concourse and other places that matter are protected? And for me, that's a resounding yay. So, if I might recap, it's almost over. 1, place matters. It increases the gross domestic product and impacts business relocation. Businesses now are looking at communities, and the best communities, the places where people want to live, is where people are relocating. It's suggested that 70% of the graduates at a first-year university in the United States are determining where they live, not based on the job, but based on the place. And what's everybody looking for? The young minds, the creative sector. We're in a knowledge economy. This stuff is very powerful if we got the nerve to embrace it. Trails and park system and open space management is a key to success. Why there's not a regional open space management strategy here, I don't know. That would include Paradise, Mount Pearl. That would be a part of a regional plan. It's really needed. I think we have an aversion to trees because when we develop, we just cut them all down. There's no advanced street management planning. I don't know why. There's no vegetative retention strategies required in our plans. I don't know why. St. John's urban design considerations. We need to create spaces that are intimate, that are interactive, that are beautiful, and that are fun. Don't forget the fun. We're all getting a bit too serious. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time.